So I'll just kind of turn it over to you and hear back from y'all about what you think we can get through today. I'm hoping that today we're going to resume the positive framework that we developed at the last meeting. Make sure we can get out of here today in anticipation of our back-to-back meeting coming up in about, 10 days or something. We have TAs to sign this morning, so we've got those printed out.
Yeah, the only one on the TA that we need to change up was a probation one. I think, remember there was I sent you a couple different probation ones at once. I sent you the initial one, then we were consolidating. It looks like the two of them, at least, it looks like they kind of got combined together almost, so.
I'll show you the one that I have on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll pull that one out, sign off on the others.
Yeah, all the other ones you sent look good. I think the Civil Service Commission one, I think looks good as well.
Excellent. Well, I was just fixing to talk about that, so you saved me some work.
Yeah, you guys basically.
You can take that off the bill. I don't have to work on it.
You guys basically hit the essence of what we were looking for. Like I said, I think.
Excellent.
Maybe a little confusion when I outlined.
See how good we are? We're reading your mind now?
Yeah, no, that was, that looked good to go for us, yeah.
So we've got, we have this list left, waiting from you on, I think we'll have everything on your table of contents. That'd be vacation leave, promotions, investigation of firefighters, discipline matrix. We talked about that some the last time, but we don't have a proposal from you on that, I don't believe.
Yeah, no, I was gonna propose that when I proposed the discipline one, and I've got 5 today I can do. I mean, I have the vacation one written. A lot of that one, I think, is, we had a discussion last meeting about the overtime and the hours worked and that kind of stuff. I think the vacation one is kind of contingent on where we were at as far as the FLSA productive time, and then staffing as well. I mean, staffing is kind of going to dictate.
Right. And we agree that those are interconnected.
Yeah.
So that's no surprise. And then the grievance procedures article, we'd like to see yours. We have one
I have
under.
that as well.
Okay.
So, and that one probably looks familiar to you. I mean, it's a mostly combination of Austin, Fort Worth. So should be familiar.
Yeah, we probably don't want any of Michael Glenn's junk.
Well, that may be true. Well, I'm not gonna say anything about Austin, so.
Thanks.
Not from you, not from yourself.
No, I wouldn't even say that if Michael wasn't a friend, so.
Yeah, Michael's a good dude, so I can get you. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 today. And I think that's everything from our table of contents.
I believe that's right.
Yeah, those are the last couple ones, so.
All right, so we'll go ahead and sign off on these TAs. Let me get a pen or something.
I'm gonna let him look at this probation.
You bet.
So I redlined the one that you sent me, so.
This was the
Okay.
combination one, right?
Yeah, this looks actually correct. The only thing,
Yes, sir.
the only thing we were looking at
You're our
was,
designated lead, so go ahead and sign these.
we may change this section slightly, and I can do that in about 2 minutes.
Okay.
So I think, I don't know if I need to explain it to everybody or not,
Yeah,
but,
we'll
so,
sit down and talk about it.
okay.
See if you
But
have changes.
this looks
That
correct.
part's
That's
right.
different from the one I got sent. And then, I was gonna add a section in there. I can explain that to you guys real quick. So just real quick on the probation one, that one looks a little more spot on. The only thing we were gonna add was in section 2, I think we were going to make a little change regarding 2C. So the way section 2 is written, and you guys maybe, if you interpret it different than we do, like we're obviously open to, but it says before or within 10 business days after the completion. And then it says determine or notify the firefighter that they've completed probation. So does that word before, would that mean that they could be cleared from probation after 20 shifts? Like, we're trying to prevent that part of it. Like, we'd rather have them be on probation for
Well,
the
that didn't
100.
even occur to me. I see
Yeah.
your point. You want to make sure that the fire chief doesn't decide after 80 shifts that this guy's good to go.
That they're good to go, right? But they can still be terminated before the 100 shifts. Like, we want to make that
Sure.
clear. It's
Correct.
just they can't be.
I think we're on the same page, because
Okay.
the chief said everybody wants the full opportunity
Yeah.
to make sure that this person should be a part of the Irving Fire Department.
Right. So yeah, that was the only change in that section.
Let us talk about that, and we'll figure out how to
Okay.
fix that language-wise. You agree,
Yes,
Janet?
yes.
And then the only other thing I was going to add in there is, I don't know if it needs to be a separate section or we can just put it at the end of section 1. But we were going to put, this article only applies to firefighters hired after the effective date of the agreement. And the reason for that is I don't want people currently on probation, like maybe they're 6 months through and then we sign this thing off and now their probation process changes. So the people that are already going through probation, doing their thing, leave them how it is. The new people that get hired, they're gonna follow this new process. It'd be, I think if we did it midway through somebody's probation, there's gonna be some confusion as far as timelines and stuff goes. And
That's a very good point, and I welcome that input so that we can think that through, and we'll make sure we're on the same page, but we'll talk about that one
Okay.
before we come back.
Okay, yeah, but other than that, I think all the other ones that were sent look good to us.
All right, so I'm fixing to, we got these TA signed off. I'll come across and hand you these. So we will work on some tweaks to that probationary period. We agree with both of your points of feedback, so we'll get that one fixed. And we're going to give you shortly our certification pay counter proposal. We'll have a brief caucus before we come back and do that. Let me shift back over here to my agenda. We have several others that we're working on, but I think we're gonna have a team. I think we do cert pay, and then we take a longer caucus for the other issues. So we can take a very short caucus on that after we get these done. We're just gonna make copies of these for everybody, right?
Okay.
Of the cert pay?
No, of the TAs.
Oh, yeah,
We
yeah,
have
we'll
one
get
copy or
copies.
2 copies? of
I
the
have one for
TAs?
signature. We can get
That's what I thought.
copies made.
That's
Yes,
what I
sir.
thought. We'll get copies.
Now that we got the no strikes and lockouts, again, throw away those locks that you were talking about,
Right,
that first meeting.
right. We'll probably put those on eBay, see what we can get for them.
We'll just have Michael Glenn come by and cut them.
I don't have any problem down the road when we're finalizing the complete document with formatting changes that are non-substantive. And so if we have any of those kind of issues,
Cool.
we can just note them, on our kind of record and our checklist.
Okay.
I do like to have the formatting consistent throughout the whole
Yeah.
document. But in my mind, that's kind of the, editing before we go to press
Yeah.
piece of this puzzle.
Perfect. I'm the same way. And like I said, if I know there's some issues with like sharing Microsoft Word or whatever, if worst case scenario, if we're having issues, you can always send a PDF if it's redlined, and I'll just update it on our working document.
That's what I thought we were doing yesterday, but that's
I don't
not
have
saved
all-
in my file, so.
I don't have all
Trying to
the,
get it.
what's the word, approvals to review some of that.
Is y'all's version on the grievance procedures ready to go?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I can send that to you.
Send that.
And I can send the, let me take a look real quick.
Somebody says it's there. Let's
I can send,
Thank you,
Oh,
sir.
thank you. These are the signed. Those-
if you guys want to discuss it, send you basically everything. Grievance is good to go. Investigation of firefighters. Disciplinary Matrix ABL, and then promotions. Like I said, vacation's ready. We're just trying to figure out what everything else looks like. Let me send you these. Gotta listen. Yeah.
Okay, and it looks like I have the cert pay ready, so I'm gonna email.
Okay.
Jason, I don't have your email. Do you just want me to send it to Brian, or you wanna give me?
Yeah,
your
you
email?
send it to me,
Okay.
I'll send
Okay.
it. Promotions, business leave,
You're gonna make me a hard copy, right?
investigation
I
firefighters,
don't have that.
Yes, I
disciplinary
have them printed out.
matrix, and
Someone's
grievance.
picking them up, hopefully.
And then, yeah, I don't mind sending the vacation one, and we'll just,
Yeah, like I s-
we depending on how everything else looks.
No, like I
if-
said, that one's obviously in play. We have, the city's perspective on that is that actual hours worked is going to be a fundamental cost of trying to achieve staffing over a long period of time, and I say long in the sense of a 4 or 5 year deal like we're talking about doing. So making the numbers work, I think that you and your members understand that the shift from, the former budgetary environment, where there was a great deal of collaboration and communication, but these things happened on a budget cycle. And the city's now having to make a decision about committing to do things, 3, 4, 5 years down the road in order to accomplish these objectives. Even though we're largely on the same page, we're having to predict the future in terms of whether or not the dollars are there to do it. That is never easy. It always results in the city having to be conservative and make sure we can meet those commitments, and that we don't put too much of a burden on the taxpayers in order to do so. But we're optimistic about being able to get that accomplished. And so all those pieces of everything that costs money in there has a bearing on, what we can commit to and on the staffing side, so.
Okay.
And I appreciate the fact that, in our earlier discussions, you've made it clear that your members appreciate what the city's done to remain competitive and to make sure that this is a good place to work in terms of total career compensation and benefits, get the best people in the door, give them the best training and keep them at the top of their craft throughout their career, so.
Yeah, I think we've seen that just recruiting numbers, obviously going from a couple hundred people to, I think, 2,000 have applied for the next test. So, would you be surprised if I told you I can't get into the cert pay one?
No, I would not be surprised if you told me that.
Password protected.
Okay.
So,
We're gonna figure this out eventually, maybe by the time this whole process is
Yeah.
over with.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not used to it either.
Yes, it's our first time trying to control the flow of stuff. So, we thought we were doing it right, but apparently not. Well, again, beyond my capabilities,
Sometimes you do it right and it still doesn't work.
right? The good news is I have somebody bringing down hard copies, so when all else fails, we'll go to the old school method of printouts.
And I'll email you.
And you're-
Do you want?
And Brian, you're good on the Civil Service Commission if we accept all those red lines and edits and convert it to a TA?
Yep.
Today?
Yeah, that
Okay.
worked exactly how we
Okay,
thought.
we'll get that done.
I messed up. I saved all of our documents as PDFs. I was about to email you. I'll get them in Word real quick for you.
It's front and back, sorry. also have a new printer. Yeah, can y'all make yours work? Better. Oh,
Yeah, they told us don't sell them.
ours are awful. I feel like, let's see. Oh, here's the extra. I don't know what it did. It did something. Sorry. I'll figure this out eventually. Okay, wait. There's a full copy. Cert pay, appeal process. Do you have that page? Yes. Did I give you that? You're welcome. Figure me out.
Bear with me for a sec. I ended up saving all of our additional proposals PDFs instead of Word. Let me get them to you in a Word doc so can make changes if needed.
I think we're gonna, having gotten these things done, I think we're gonna break for a caucus and come back and discuss this certain incentive pay.
Okay.
And give you a further report about what we think we can finalize today. So you can take your time and get those sent to us, but we're gonna come back on that article in particular, and then we'll take a caucus on something else,
Okay.
on the other items,
Alrighty.
if that works for y'all.
That'd be fine.
Okay, yeah, we'll go discuss this.
Get you to work on those.
Yeah.
I'm trying again to send you that in a Word document, Brian.
Okay.
So just that way, if you guys do need to look at it and edit it, you'll have it.
Okay.
Okay. And we're gonna work on probationary period, okay.
Y'all ready to proceed?
Yes, I saw your email from 10:20 with staffing and work hours
Yes. Ready to go over that?
to, I'm sure by surprise, I cannot open them.
No, don't tell me that.
Nope, they are password protected.
Chad.
Yep.
And I've even tried doing like when I put my email in, it sends me a password and I put it in there. It just says there was an error. So I tried quite a bit yesterday or the day before, and I think gave up after like the 15th try. So
You trying to get Chad down there?
Well, I've emailed Chad and Lisa to have them fix it.
we didn't do.
Yeah, we'll get this done so that you've got it.
We haven't TA civil service yet, but
No,
yeah, just make sure.
no, but y'all were good with those
Yeah.
civil service changes.
I think that was the only other one we didn't TA yet, right? That we're good with was the Civil Service Commission.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
printing that too.
I gotcha.
Yep.
Having a hard time printing, I guess. It's password protected for them, so.
All fun. You've become so secure.
It's good. Then, just so y'all know, Mr. Rozier will be back in a little bit. He also went to a doctor's appointment for his neck, so he'll be back. Maybe he'll get a cool neck brace also. Yeah.
It's stressful. Tough on the little guys.
Brian, you got them? You gonna send them around to your team?
Yeah,
right?
getting into these guys
Sure.
real quick.
Just let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
So you're able to open it once and then not a second
So
time?
no, now I can open it again, but it looks like when I save it to my computer, it locks it. So let me export it to my computer as a PDF and then see if I can send it to these guys.
Mighty good.
It's weird.
Technology.
I'm about to give up on technology.
Any luck yet?
Yeah, I think they were able to
All right, so
get
if y'all have it in front of you, then, you just let me know. Are we ready to have a discussion on it?
think so. I didn't know if you guys wanted to hit on the Serpay at all yet, or you want to go over the other two?
I'm gonna come back to cert pay, talk
Okay.
about it. We appreciate your feedback on the probationary period, and we've got a TA form to sign off on that one in a minute.
Already done.
We appreciate that. And we decided that, in the context of what we're doing, the core piece of what we're all about here is the staffing issue and your association's objective to include the four-person staffing model in this contract. And I want to talk about that in some detail. I want to have a little brief tangent to start out with. We were disappointed and offended by the ground rules violation of Mark Abide going directly to city council members instead of talking to this team. Orlando wants to address that briefly. We're not trying to pick a fight with anybody. I want to reemphasize before he gives you his perspective on that we are working really hard to be on the same page with you and your team about this. And I think, frankly, we are really, really close to being on the same page. And so that's the context that I want you to hear, kind of the impact that whatever, had on this process.
Thank you, Brian and the rest of the IAFF team. We worked hard to establish trust, and I think in any foundation for a relationship is trust. And this is day one of our new negotiations, and I think it's very important that we continue that trust going forward. And when it got violated, it kind of took us back because we thought we had good ground rules, and we all agreed to them. But I just want to make sure going forward that that trust is established, and we continue it not only in this negotiations, but throughout the years, because this is the foundation that sets the bar for everything else, and we have to continue that trust going as we move forward. Like Lowell said, we were just very disappointed when we saw that, when it floated to us, kind of blindsided us, and anyways, I think you understand our position. We are not very satisfied with it, so that's basically it.
Okay, yeah. Well, like I said in the email, apologies for that. I had a discussion with him, make sure that doesn't happen again. I didn't send out our ground rules to the membership, besides some basic kind of points, so they didn't see the whole thing. But I've had a discussion with him, and that kind of stuff should not happen again.
All right. We do appreciate that. And what I want to do is I want to kind of go back to the positive side of this because, I can't remember who, somebody made a reference this morning to issues in Austin, Texas, and you guys don't want to be Austin, Texas. Management doesn't want us to be like Austin, Texas, and you guys don't want to be like Austin, Texas. And, I've had the fun of being in all those different places, I think this is a remarkable scenario that's going on here. Y'all already know much better than me the history of the city of Irving trying to make progress in making this, one of the, gold star fire departments in the state of Texas and making it competitive in terms of pay and benefits, recognizing the need to have appropriate and adequate staffing, accomplishing that over a, period of time. The history, as I have learned it, reading some of the official planning documents and being briefed, from our side, moving up to four-person staffing in this department, making that commitment at some point in years past for all new fire stations to be brought online with that standard, paying attention to, which stations have the highest call volumes and needs and so forth, using grants for upward movement, and then putting the city's budgetary resources behind maintaining that level of staffing at those stations. All that, of course, has to be done, and I mentioned this earlier this morning, in the budget cycle, historically, the multiple service demands on city resources. Number two here and everywhere else in the world is always going to be, the public safety police side of that coin. Those are the two largest demands on city resources. The city doesn't have much control, if any control, over how its, property tax values and certified rolls and sales tax revenues come to pass. Irving appears to have been very fortunate. What I really want to emphasize is there is a strong level of support for four-person crews and staffing in this department. It certainly is there with the chief and the chief's office. The chief has been advocating for that for a period of time. The city manager considers it to be appropriate and justified. Management supports and agrees with four-person staffing. We believe that Irving firefighters deserve that level of support from their colleagues and their department to make sure that they are safely positioned to do their job. We believe the citizens deserve that level of service. And so we think it's important for your members to understand that. I wanted the chief to talk a little bit about the future and focus background and what this looked like before you guys went to the voters to bring the bargaining model into the process as we get into the article. Because what we are doing here is doing our best over a 5-year period to achieve what needs to happen in this community. And in order for it to be affordable, it's not easy, but we share the objective that that's something that we want to accomplish. It's my understanding that your vision for doing this would have been in a shorter time period. The city can't make a commitment to do it in a shorter time period, but the city can make a commitment to do it in the time period that we've reflected here in this proposal, laying out the staffing standards. And then also I want to talk about the details in the work hours and have some discussion back and forth about what we're trying to accomplish there. But let me let the chief talk about the future and focus, because I think y'all are probably aware of this since it's been laid out to the department in the past, within the last year and even before that.
Yeah, thank you, Lowell. So as you guys know, every year we go around and we talk about future and focus and what our goals are to achieve over a 5-year plan. And we've done everything from add the 4th firefighter in dispatch for incident command to what we're working on, and the city manager has committed to support that plan moving forward. So we recently had our line item discussion about staffing. It was included in that, and so what we're looking at this first year is try to get our administrative staff on board to support the personnel that we're looking to add in the field moving forward. So this coming fiscal year, and I think it's maybe a question there, and that's why I wanted to address it, is we're looking at adding the administrative staff to that first year. The second year, you see, is also part of the future and focus that I've presented in the past to try to get the 4th firefighter on the remaining 3 trucks, which amounts to 14 FTEs. And so the city manager's committed to move forward on the other ones the following years, and as you can see, we got 14, 14, 13, 13, and that gives us a 1.5 ratio for hiring. It covers our time off. It'll help us on the overtime. So he's front-loaded it with 14 in order to get those. You know, you take 1 position per shift, or 3 positions in this case, which would be 9 positions at time and a half. That's 13 and a half. So he's rounded it up to 14, front-loaded it for 2 years so that can carry over to cover the next 2 years at 13. So that gives us the 1.5 ratio as a group instead of individual year to year. So the future and focus was the primary of importance in this discussion, and like I said, the first year he wants to help me focus on administrative staffing. And just to share with y'all, like we've done in the past, we're asking for 2 battalion chiefs in administration. We're asking for 2 lieutenants, 1 for EMS, 1 for training, 2 firefighters for training. We're also asking for a clerical staff and an additional quartermaster position. So these positions are necessary to support moving forward the 4 firefighter staffing. We haven't had additional staffing and administration to the degree that we've had it in the field. We benchmark against Lubbock, Laredo, Arlington, Plano. We're on average 22 positions short in administration, and I think these positions here will catch us up in order to support what we're doing in the field as we continue to grow out there.
And the administrative enhancement in the upcoming fiscal year was already a part of this plan even before we got into the bargaining environment.
Correct.
So that was already a part of the dynamic, and I think y'all are aware of that. So.
Yep.
You know, and I think to emphasize what Lowell was saying is basically the cost of adding positions, it's very costly for the city. And we're running an entire enterprise, an entire city. So when we're balancing the budget, there's only so much of the pie you can give to certain areas. while still maintaining the operations of the entire city as a whole. This is a huge commitment for the city to go out there for 5 years to commit to this kind of staffing levels, because there are no guarantees it's going to happen. But now we'll be having it in a contract, and we're obligated to move forward. So it's a huge, huge, huge undertaking for the city to move forward with this kind of staffing.
So associated with that is the work hours. Y'all had made us a proposal that had some details about the structure of the work hours. We're asking you to give us flexibility in the work hours so that the chief can make those schedules work effectively and achieve the most efficient costing for those functions and positions. We're willing to continue having a discussion with you about that. I'm not as smart as I need to be from the chief's perspective about what he needs here, but we're certainly willing to have an earnest discussion about what other interests you may have that are not reflected in this article. The context of this article is that, and this is going to be hard for me to get across to y'all and for you to share with your members, but the budgetary realities of what's going on here, I think, are important for your membership to realize what a win-win this is. And I don't consider it to be a win for y'all or a win for us, because the objective here is to accomplish this as soon as it is practically possible based on its affordability in the community. The city manager is agreeing to the provisions in this proposal, recognizing that at this point in time, even though we're committing to this to Irving firefighters, we don't know how we're going to pay for it. We're satisfied that it is a realistic target, that it's a target that we will be able to meet. The funding obligations article that I have alluded to earlier give the city a little bit of safety valve. I know that Jason up in Denton is familiar with, that tool that we used in the Denton contract from long ago. The city has the ability at the council level to adjust staffing levels if revenue pictures change things. Optimistically, what we're hoping is going to happen is that things are going to historically stay more or less on their trend line, and that we're going to be able to accomplish these objectives exactly when they are projected and committed to in the contract here. So that's what our intention is. It is, I'm proud of the city team for saying that we're not going to take the usual city approach to wait and see whether or not we have the money before we do it, but to say this is something we're going to make it a priority, and we're going to do what it takes to find the money. And only if something happens that we don't expect are we going to push pause or do something that postpones any of these deadlines. So look at it in that context, and what we would like to do is to go back and have a caucus on whatever else you feel like is important for you to have from us in order to focus on this. My objective today is to have everything on the table and have information and answers for y'all so that when we come back in about 10 days, everybody knows what they need to know and everybody has language on the table on all the remaining articles. We had talked earlier about some others that y'all were going to send to us. I know you've been working on various other things. When we go back in our caucus today, if there's anything else you have for us, we'd like to spend time on those and have at least one more interchange. We'd like to hear back from you on this staffing piece and then to get the other pieces out of the way. And I'll talk about the fire certification pay when we come back later in the afternoon and just explain what we're trying to accomplish there.
Okay, yeah, I just had one question before we took off, just looking at the staffing standards one. Maybe formatting was off just with the issues or whatever, but so I see 4 lines on there. I mean, nothing on A was all meant to be.
It should start at A. So,
Okay, so-
just to clarify, the thought process here was to to start these additional positions beyond what the chief has already talked about that was already in the works for this upcoming fiscal year, to start these additional positions beginning FY 26, 27.
I see that part.
And again, what I wanted to clarify too is Lola alluded to it, but we went out further. Your initial proposal kind of ended at FY 27, 28. Management went further in being willing to go out to those next 2 fiscal years, even after that. But that is all contingent upon an agreement that this is a 5-year term for this initial contract. And so if for some reason, we're unable to agree on a 5-year term, then what is right now D and E, but it should be C and D, you're right, Brian, the formatting got messed up, then those would come off.
Okay.
We're not going to commit to anything that is outside the term of the contract.
Okay,
And the first increment of staffing is in response to your proposal, the 14 positions that we're proposing for 26, 27. That was meeting the proposal that you had put on the table. Sorry, thank you very much. Meeting the proposal that you'd put on the table for the upcoming fiscal year, 25, 26, because as the chief just laid out, the staffing proposal that he has set up require these way behind administrative slots to be filled first so that the rest of the operational functions are being taken care of with sufficient personnel. That was already in the plan. Even though it wasn't a part of your proposal, it's still a part of the costing behind what we're doing here. What we typically do, Brian, on these contracts is when we do costs and we figure out how much the contract costs, we didn't put that in here because you didn't ask for it, okay? And so the costing on that is not something that you asked for. And so we're not putting it on here, even though it's a part of what's going to be happening in the department as a part of the budget, so.
Okay.
Hope that makes sense.
Yep, and then for the admin personnel, what was the number of positions you guys were looking at that on
13?
that first year?
First year, 7, okay.
7 civil service positions?
Right.
But 7 civil service, chief, and 1 clerical.
Okay.
Can you, Chief, I have 2 VCs, 2
Yeah.
LPs, 2 firefighters.
Will you microphone?
Microphone.
Jeremy.
Six civil service personnel, 2 general government. Okay. Yes, sir. And that was a quartermaster, and what was the other one? Clerical staff. Thank you.
There's some more comments on the work hours that I'd like to bring forward. I know you brought. I'd like you to do that. Okay. So a lot of these where y'all propose the 4-day work week or 5-day or whatever the chief, like for example, section 1, that's pretty plain forward. That's our work schedule in the field, 27-day work cycle, 24/48. Second section there is fire administration training personnel. The reason I wanted these scratched is because they need to fill in the need of what our expectations are, and as the fire chief or future fire chiefs, they need to be able to manage those personnel without contracts being thrown in their face as needed. If something, God forbid, bad happens in Irving and I need them there 5 days and they say, well, I don't have to work 5, I'm going to work 4 per contract. I don't want to face that challenge. So I'd rather stick with the FLSA law that gives me the ability to work them 4 days or 5. Now, as you know, a lot of them now work 4-day weeks, but a lot of times when I bring them to administration, they don't get to go to that or have that privilege until they meet expectations that they're doing their job. And so I want to maintain that right to continue to do that practice. You move down to fire prevention, basically the same thing applies, but what I put out there for discussion is y'all had requested or put forward the 4 fire prevention specialists shall operate as shift duty investigators. As you know, we talked about this probably 8 or 10 years ago trying to do this. The city manager is open to this. What we didn't want to do is have to figure the schedule. I know what you were trying to compare it to is the dispatch office. Dispatch is on a 365-day work cycle. I'm getting that verbiage from Fort Worth and Dallas. I know at one time we had it, and it was an approval process through the commission to be able to work those hours on a 365-day work cycle. However, prevention is not on that. They're on a 7-day work cycle. So to put them on a 24/48 means they're going to work 3 out of 4 weeks, they're going to work 8 hours overtime, if that makes sense. So what I'm proposing is to put it back in your court and to come up with a schedule that works, that fits that criteria. Now, there's some other options we can talk about down the road, but the city manager's not opposed to allowing 4 of them to go on shift duty. Having said that, there's some parameters there that need to be met as you work on a schedule. One is no overtime. We don't want a predetermined amount of overtime to be applied to these personnel that are working a schedule. You know, if overtime is required, then that, of course, that'll come through the proper channels like we do now, but not just schedule. Right, not built-in overtime. 2 is we won't be hiring additional staffing to cover them to go on shift duty, okay? And then, of course, finally, 3, they need to meet expectations. That means measurements, KPIs, getting their inspections done. And based on that criteria, if it can't be met, then it's up to the fire chief to basically put that schedule on hold, bring them back to 410s or 5/8s to complete expectations, and then it's up to the fire chief to re-implement that schedule as needed. Their primary goal, as you know, is to make sure inspections are done. We've got high hazards, we got moderate hazards, and we got low hazards. Highs are done every year, moderates are done 50% per year over a 2-year period, and then the lows are done 33% over a 3-year period. So the city manager hired these additional fire prevention personnel, 6 to be exact, since 2015, to meet the need of the city to get these inspections done. Now, to put them on shift duty, what we don't want to do is pull that away. But we are open to put them on shift duty if they can maintain getting their inspections done. And so that's some of the criteria that needs to be considered when y'all work on that schedule for them to go to a 24/48. And the only other thing I would offer up is, you know, to consider who fills in when they're off. You know,
Yeah,
go ahead.
and that is in, so that like little 10-page proposal thing I sent you regarding that is on the top of page 4, that first bullet point. It covers the overtime and fill-in if they're off on vacation or sick. It basically says it just reverts back to what the current existing on-call system is. So you're not hiring overtime
Okay.
to fill that position if they're gone. It just goes back to
Gotcha.
whatever it was. And like I said, that proposal I sent, it's on page 4. It's the first bullet point on that 4th page. So it covers kind of that part a little bit.
Okay,
So,
that makes sense.
but I know that part's not in the contract. That was just in the proposal. So we'll kind of work on navigating that language to make it. I know one in the contract, the proposal's not legal. So we'll figure out a way to make that work.
Okay.
But
I just want to bring that forward, that is not a closed deal. That's open for discussion there. But the rest of it, as far as controlling what work hours are, I'd rather not give that privilege up as a fire chief for my personnel to be dictated what schedule they're going to work over what I need. So,
Sorry, I missed that piece. Thanks for picking it up.
yes, sir.
So do y'all have any further articles that you want us to study at our next caucus, or any questions before we break?
You want to address it at all?
I think you said we're going to get back to survey. Let me pull this up real quick. Yeah, I can, let me send you some of these articles real quick. I'll send them, and then I'll briefly kind of touch on them quickly before we break, and then that will kind of give you guys our thought process as you go into discussions.
Let me go ahead and give you some input on Article 10 on certain incentive pay, because you've got that draft from us. What we have is the intermediate, advanced, and master firefighters over there in section 3, you'll see that on the certification pay on the next page, we've crossed out the inspection investigator and TCOL because those are basically criteria, qualifications for the job, and our attitude about that is certain incentive pays should be for the purpose of maintaining and paying for extra value and/or incentivizing people to get extra skills and abilities. We, on the SCBA technician, we support an increase on that. The chief's perspective is, and he can address this, that the demand for swiftwater rescue runs is relatively small and probably doesn't justify that item. We looked at the admin pay and did a market comparison. We think that we're actually above market on our admin stipend. And I think that section 6 down there, applying for the additional pays, actually comes from your proposal. It's pretty close, and we have a tweak in there of the language, but substantively, I don't think there's any change from the language that you had proposed. So that's the high-level perspective on what we said yes or no to. And then we also have an approval process that we have added, I think maybe might have been inadvertently cut off of your proposal, section 7 on there. I don't know if that was our language or your language.
It's in the existing policy, so we just carried it over.
So it's a cut and paste
Yeah.
from existing policy. So that's your background for your discussions on what that article looks like. And I guess in the high-level view there, we're trying to remain competitive as to these elements of pay. I think that as you look at or try to compare the market on these, you have to look at where base pay, step pay, overall career value, retirement contributions, and so forth are in Irving. Because in a lot of other places, you can find higher numbers on this or that certification or whatever, but that department is really behind us. And so these are the enhancements that we think are currently justified, and we appreciate you looking at it. That's the set of glasses that we're looking at these numbers through.
And I agree with what you proposed, Lauren. I can't add to any different than what you've already said. The only thing I want to make sure that we covered is the base, where you were looking at fire prevention, fire investigation, and TCOL. As you know, we pay a stipend for arson investigators, which includes the TCOL qualification. They have to be TCOL in order to be an arson investigator. But what we have edited that document with is to move the levels for inspector, and like we do the firefighters. When they move up to intermediate or advanced or master, then they'll get those same type pays.
Yeah, I think on this one, we were good with most of the changes on there. I mean, we had 2 changes we were, going to propose or counter with. I don't know if you want us to dive into that at all.
Certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, let's use our time wisely.
Okay, so under certification pay, section 4, we're good with Swiftwater Rescue Tech going down to 50, or staying at 50, what it currently is, not going up to 100, but we were looking at adding, if we're going to do that, then add Swiftwater boat operator to certification pay at $50 a month, and I'd be happy to let Mr. Estes chime in on that a little bit.
I'll have to disqualify myself, since anything that has to do with boats, I'm in favor of.
The rationale behind this, we have Swiftwater operators. We give them equipment, a boat to operate. In the tone of the department, we've focused training for specific apparatus. We send our firefighters to receive a Class B driver's license. Our training division is putting effort into ensuring firefighters are trained to operate their specialty apparatus. And yet, there has been an attempt, and I know schooling is difficult, but we need to make an attempt to train these swiftwater technicians to actually drive a boat. So we would like to make the suggestion that we add that boat operator to the minimum qualification to be a swiftwater technician, and then with both of those classes justifying $100, $50 per. As it stands now, minimum staffing is one person. Having a swiftwater technician in a boat, you need the boat operator and you need a bowman. So I believe this would then justify bringing up our own levels to address any swiftwater incident that we may have.
Okay, I guess my first question is, where does the certification come from? I'm not familiar if the commission gives a boat operator certification. I know there's training, and according, I think it's 1610 or 1640, you know, that the qualifications for swift water is all-inclusive, but is there one specific that cuts out a boat operator, boat motor operator?
There are, Chief, I'm familiar with a school that we send our people to now, Tarrant County. They operate a boat operator course. Other entities require that training, and I think in the tone that we're trying to train our personnel already, we would like to see us set that standard, send our people to training to actually operate that boat.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that, are we comparing the cities that their swiftwater team's part of a deployment team, or is it they just function within the city as a single entity?
Not really comparing to any other cities right now. Just knowing that that is a course that's available and that we have not fulfilled any training for them at this point.
I think the big thing with the addition and the reason we were looking at 100 on there was the hours of training and continuing education that goes into it. When we look at the other certifications, I get some of them do have some more additional pay. They have a little more training, which is why, for the most part, those are at 150. It's a little less training in CE for Swiftwater, but not a whole lot less. And they have to maintain that annually, continue training and upkeep. So that was our thought process behind the 100 initially. But then, we discussed it and we figured 50 is fine, but if we can give, again, some additional training, additional hours they have to do with that boat operator certification, that may justify that $50 more there. But I'm just trying to get you guys to see what our thought process was looking at initial certification, time spent, and continuing education throughout the year. I mean, that's where we came up with 100.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, but our Swiftwater team, they don't deploy very often to Swiftwater. It's very, very minimal. I mean, we've got the data to actual Swiftwater events. They do more recovery or animal rescues than they do Swiftwater. And what I want to be careful of and be mindful of is we have personnel on other teams. Are we going to start looking at certifications to learn how to drive the hazmat apparatus or the technical rescue team apparatus? And, so I would like to do a deeper dive into this certification thought process, where the certification comes from, what the requirements are, how we're going to maintain that moving forward before we just commit to it. So if y'all have got that kind of data and benchmarks with other cities that are doing it, for example, if this team was going to be part of a deployable team regionally and where we send them off to training and get this certification where it can benefit the region as well as the state as needed, kind of like the people in Kerr County, then that might be another opportunity to raise the level for our Swiftwater team to join those task force teams.
Appreciate the dialogue.
Yeah.
Anything else before we break?
Yeah, so the administrative pay, kind of going into that one a little bit. So the thought process behind the percentage as opposed to a dollar amount was when they go down there, they're no longer, so several departments in the area, a allow this in the Metroplex, but if you're on administrative assignment, you can still work overtime in the field. They don't get that while they're here, so we figured a percentage kind of helps offset that a little bit. And with the percentage, it also adjusts, so depending on what rank you are, right? So if you're a firefighter, certification is going to be less. If you're a battalion chief, you're doing more work, you have more responsibility, that certification pays them to be a little more. So, like I said, we're open to discussing percentage, you know, if you guys are open to that. And I'll just give you a quick example. You know, I just threw a random number out there, like 3%, for example. That comes out to roughly $15 more a month than what 250 is. But like I said, it gives those guys the ability that aren't eligible to make overtime in the field, gives them that ability to come down, not only make up some of that difference, but also it is a totally different schedule than what they're used to. You know, they work 1 day on, 2 days off. They go down there. Now they're working 4 or 5 days a week, whatever it may be. So there is a little modification. Their normal work-life balance, a lot of times, maybe their wife has to work less or something like that, trying to figure out a way to balance it out. Like I said, I think on the firefighter side, you may end up saving a little bit depending on where they are. But obviously, the higher up rank you go, it's percentage. It's going to go up a little bit as well.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and I'm not sure if any of you were here when we implemented this years ago, but it was put into place because of the impact that it has on firefighters coming from the field on a 24/48 to an 8-hour workday, from childcare to fuel cost to lunch cost every day. And so that's the original purpose, and I think we need to be mindful of that, because I don't feel like as a department or a city we should try to be making up for overtime loss. Now, they do have the opportunity to work overtime for special events outside the city at any rank, and we changed that, 2 years ago? So they do have some opportunity. It just doesn't impact, I guess, maybe their pension or whatever within the city, but they do have opportunities to work overtime for special events, and we've got quite a few of those. So
Okay. So the admin pay was, I guess, put in like 8 years ago, something like that, somewhere around there.
it's probably been close. Mike Evans was the one that got that implemented, and he retired in 2009. So it's probably been in place 20 years
Okay.
at minimum.
What was that the number? 250, was that the number in place back in 2009 as well?
It was
Okay.
and is, and like I said, and it's been mentioned here that there's been a benchmark, and I don't know if y'all have got a benchmark on this as well, but I know our HR has done some work on this, and what they have found is we're still above some of the cities that they benchmark, and maybe if y'all got a list of cities you benchmark, that would be helpful in additional discussions.
Okay. But I think those were our only two thoughts in that article. I don't know how we go forward on this one. I guess we go discuss it, figure it out. Okay. And then we'll discuss the work hours and staffing standards and all that good stuff. And then I'll send you send you 5 of the 6 for now. I gotta modify the 6th, and I will explain to you guys what we're proposing. Let you get that here in a minute.
And then I have the TA prepared on the Civil Service Commission,
Okay.
if y'all want to get that
Yeah,
executed.
good with that. Let me
Let me just say kind of one last thing before we break for our next caucus. What we're trying to communicate to y'all and make sure that you can pass along to your members is that our approach to this bargaining process, and we see you doing, making serious efforts to do the same thing. We appreciate the fact that your team comes in here listening to the fire chief. It's a lot of fun to be in this kind of process in a department to where people respect each other on both sides of the so-called labor management divide, okay? What we're trying to do here is listen to the proposals that you make, do everything that we can afford that makes sense to us, as opposed to trying to give you little bits and pieces of what you're asking for. That's not our negotiation strategy. And so we're doing our best to do that, and we appreciate your having the same attitude about it. And I just want to tell you that I think that means a lot. And, you know, unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure which it is, we don't have a bunch of citizens here sitting in the gallery looking at us, trying to figure out what we're doing and whether or not we're treating them right. But I'm proud of y'all for treating them right, and I'm proud of this city team for treating them right, too. So.
Thank you. Did you want me to hit on some of those that I just sent real quick?
Absolutely,
before you
please
guys go?
do.
Okay. Just let me know when you're ready, but I'll make it brief on all of them. So mostly self-explanatory.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So I'll just go in a number order here. So Article 16 is promotions. Section 1 is a little different from what we currently do. This kind of echoes what we were seeking in the probation process. Basically, to go from firefighter to FEO, that very first step, we're just extending the time required to be a firefighter before being eligible to promote. Currently, the way it's set up is 6 months off of probation, you can promote. Feel like you probably need a little more time in the field as a firefighter before kind of taking that next step. When we discussed this one and thought about how the future of the department looks, felt like it'd be beneficial to the future as far as leaders, decision makers, to have a little more experience at that first level before being eligible. So having it at 4 years basically again, timeline with their probation period, that ends up making it about 1.5 to 2 years off probation before you're eligible. So it's still 2 years, just not counting that probation time, basically. Like I said, we felt like that was a good plan for the future.
And the 4 years runs from what? Certification?
No, it's from data fire. So
Data fire, okay.
yeah, so yeah, data hire until date of examination have to have 4 years. So the language is basically the same as what the local 143 is. We just changed 2 years to 4 years. And then I put in there at the end, again, the section only applies to firefighters hired after the effective date. Don't want it affecting people currently, potentially in the process. So Section 2 and Section 3 are copy and pasted from local civil service rules. I think after that first 4 year, again, that kind of gives us that buffer for future promotions. But those two sections are copy and pasted from the local rules. Section 4 and 5 are a little different. They're additions to it. So the reason we put these in here was, I know currently the way it's set up is under civil service, a list is good for a year and it has to get certified. So every year the test kind of gets moved back a little bit. So it's consistently changing, trying to have a little bit of consistency as to when the test is. There's a little bit of, because I understand there's scheduling issues with gang building or whatever, so there's a little bit of leeway in there, on or about the first week. If you can't do it, then you got 10 business days. So it kind of gives a little bit of wiggle room, I know, for scheduling purposes. And then the Section 5 on there basically says that the source list or source material will be done by the end of the previous year. So the thought process behind that was, if it's done by December 31st, it gives people about 90 days to study for the exam, which is what they currently have to do under 143. And the reason we picked April was, I guess if you go down to Section 6, April gives us enough time to, again, if there's 10 business days we're moving around, like let's say the test is supposed to be beginning of April, it gets pushed back 10 days for scheduling conflicts or whatever. We're kind of getting into the middle end of April. And then we still have to go in front of the Civil Service Commission for appeals and stuff. So the gap between when the test is and when the list is certified gives us enough time, if there's, like I said, wiggle room in the test date being moved around, and enough time to get in front of the commission to appeal them. The biggest thing with that one that I think we'll have to figure out, and I don't know if it's in an article or an MOU or however we do it, but our current testing schedule right now, I think we're in like October, November roughly. So we may have to do something like the test administered this October, November would be eligible for until we can get the next list certified. And then after that initial one, it would just be on a consistent schedule. But you get what I'm saying is, right now, if we do it October, November.
You'd have to have a longer life of the list on the front end.
Yeah, so it's either shorter or longer. Shorter probably ain't gonna fly.
Right.
So, and everybody would understand, just that first one is longer.
Right.
Once we get on that schedule, it'd be a year at a time.
Yeah, I think longer is probably gonna be the answer. We'll think that through. I don't know what the chief thinks about that, but the shorter one usually doesn't work.
Yeah.
I had a question about that. I'm assuming that in this operation that typically your lists actually are sufficient to last for a year, to where you don't have to have, short period promotional exams?
So that's in Section 6, right?
Okay.
For eligibility list exhausted. So it kind of goes into, if the list is exhausted, we have to administer another test unless the next test is coming up within 60 days. So there's a little bit of flexibility in there just in case the list is exhausted. Any questions, comments on that one? No? Okay. The next one is business leave. Here's the fun one. So, I know you guys sent yours. Sound like you were expecting probably a counter. This is what we came up with before we saw yours, got to the table, anything like that. I mean, the reality is it's black and white in here. I mean, the hours are significantly more than what you guys initially offered. So what I did was I looked at how much time we spend at convention, at hearings, leadership training, whatever training we can think of, whether it be through the TSAF and the international. That's about how much time we're off. So if you figure we're going to convention next week, we have, per the state bylaws, we have 4 delegates. So 4 people go to convention. That's 8 shifts burned right there. It's about 2 shifts per person. It's a week-long deal. So that's 8 right there. If we go to service training for learn how to handle discipline procedures, whatever that may be, again, that's another 2 shifts per person that go down there. And then included in kind of that next paragraph is just kind of what it covers. Training, seminars, workshops, all that good stuff. I'm not going to dive too much into everything. I'm sure you guys are going to have some discussion about it. Put in there, I've got to notify the chief who the board of directors is, who's eligible for that. And then, like I said, everything else is kind of self-explanatory. Use of business leave, we just have to give notification. So I put 3 calendar days notice on there, and the reason I did that was it kind of aligns with notification requirements in the discipline article. Just so if we get notified of a disciplinary hearing 3 days prior, we can make sure we have somebody there. And yeah, I think that covers the bulk of it right now. Happy to answer any questions, but I'm sure you guys will have plenty of discussion about that one.
Let me just give you a little brief feedback. We appreciate that. I appreciate you going back and looking at what you're actually utilizing, because that was going to be my first question in response is, what is your historical actual utilization, and what do you see your needs for? The city's perspective on this is that there is a public purpose and logic behind the city absorbing cost of some portion of union activity, but we consider that to be a partnership of sorts where both sides need to pick up the cost, responsibility, make the sacrifice, however you want to phrase that. And so we have some flexibility about this. We're looking at how we can do that. We want y'all to understand that the way we look at it, and it's not a whole lot different than, the way the Supreme Court looked at this in the Austin case, which I'm sure you're familiar with, about whether or not ABL was even constitutionally permissible or not. is that the city ought to put, some resources on the table for this. The association ought to put some resources on the table for this. Your members ought to invest in it to some degree. And there's multiple models out there like that. And so that's what we're looking for, is something that's balanced, where both sides are picking up their part of the tab. It's kind of, maybe it's not exactly like Dutch treat, when you're going out to get a steak or something, but there's some analogy there. So that's what we'll be looking at. And appreciate you explaining how you came up with what your ask is.
Okay. The next one, see, investigation of firefighters. I think this one is, I don't even know how to explain this besides it basically just lays out the discipline investigation process. This actually, idea came from Denton's contract. I don't know if there's much to chime in on, besides it follows 143 for the most part.
There it is on. No, and interesting that you kind of looked at a variety of contracts, and obviously this is just designed to kind of help both sides in the process, kind of, we're all playing by the same rule and getting timeframes, and especially in regards to the statute. And as well as trying to cover some of the basic rights, or what we would perceive as basic rights of the firefighter under investigation. Section over access to records, and all those things leading up to the investigative process and a time frame, as part of that. And trying to capture that, because not knowing any particular fire chief at any particular time, and trying to capture that during at least the length of the contract. But it's designed to also, the confidentiality side of it, which is applicable to both sides, both the individual and administration. And then covering the basic idea of association representation during the disciplinary process, and just trying to capture that within the language of the contract.
And you guys had it in your initial discipline proposal, the alternative discipline thing, that's also in this one. I know there were some appealables and non-appealables, that section there. So the reason I sent this at the same time as the discipline matrix is, the idea behind the discipline matrix is that matrix does basically lay out what's appealable, what's not appealable. So going into Article 22, the disciplinary matrix, again, I know kind of time is of the essence to get a contract done with all the budget and stuff going on. Didn't want to rush the establishing the matrix. Felt like, okay, let's get a team together from fire admin, a team together from the association. There's X number of time to figure it out. We both sit down, something that's agreeable, and then we take that, like, look, this is what we agreed to in the matrix. These are non-appealable, these are appealable, but the matrix hopefully simplifies our process with what common, infractions or occurrences or something like that. Obviously, it's not going to address everything. The chief's got to have some discretion for abnormal circumstances or whatever that may be. But really with the matrix, what we're trying to accomplish is the common occurrence stuff, so we can maybe improve efficiency in that process.
I appreciate the fact that you're open to the, dividing, the world into non-appealable items. I think it's good for firefighters. I think it's good for their association. I think it's good for the city and the public. I have some other ideas about that I'll talk to the chief about. It may well be that we can structure this to where we have a contract article with some default provisions that are non-appealable, and then we shift to the disciplinary matrix once it's finalized. But we'll talk about that and look forward to reading that proposal.
Okay. And then the last one, did you have some or not? Okay. Last one on there was the grievance procedure. Actually think looked at a bunch of different ones. I think this one came from Austin. So we reviewed 7 or 8 of them. Figured this one probably applies to our circumstance the best, but
I'll mention one thing that we're gonna wanna talk to you about on this one, and I'll tell you the same way that I've told the team over here. One of the things that I have come to believe in 40 years approximately of doing this stuff, is that the typical grievance arbitration scenario leaves a lot to be desired. And so one of the things that I'm going to be recommending on our side, I'd like you to think about, is a scenario to where if you can't resolve the impasse internally, then you go to mediation and you select somebody to do a mandatory mediation. And the mediation, if unsuccessful, converts into an arbitration proceeding to where your mediator becomes the decider. That way that way the mediator has had an opportunity to try to solve the problem with both sides, already knows about the problem before the hearing starts. The mediator actually gets to tell the parties what material he or she believes is necessary to resolve the dispute. So it's a little bit different than just having a hearing and getting a ruling. It's more efficient because you don't have to pay for the mediation and an arbitration if the mediation is unsuccessful. I've seen so many places that tried to use mediation, and it's just an extra step that costs more money. Got familiarity with this. I think it has a lot. I think it has a lot of advantages, but that's probably what we're going to propose as an adjunct to what's going on in Austin.
okay.
And although I don't have any approval for this, when I'm bargaining with Austin in another month, I'm probably going to be proposing it there too, so.
Yeah, and then I think I did, FMCS is in there. Again, we don't know what the deal is with them, but it says, or a mutually agreed mediator, arbitrator, whatever. But
Yep.
I kept FMCS in there just because who knows what's going to happen.
That's right.
So,
That's exactly what you needed to do. We already talked about that.
yeah, and I think that's the gist of it for now. Like I said, I have the vacation one done. I think we need to go have a discussion about some of the proposals we received, and then we can probably get that one to you guys before the end of the day.
That's
So,
great. That's great. So we will take a break for caucus and food, and what I'm going to suggest is I will let y'all know in about an hour when we want to reconvene, and you can do the same. If there's something you want to get back together early, you have questions or something you want to do, we can get back together sooner. Otherwise, we'll give you notice in an hour.
Okay, cool.
It's almost noon right now, yeah.
Right.
Sounds good. Depends on what
It's almost noon.
they're.
Prepared, thank you. We are prepared to talk about the two that we have just sent you. I was going to make some remarks. We were spending a good bit of time on your ABL article. Give you some feedback on that. We are not fond of the pooled hours model, and especially the pooled hours model that's funded entirely by the city and not by member contributions. We actually prefer a model where we figure out what is an appropriate, legitimate accommodation of the association's interest to have time off. We were taking a really close look at the language from the Denton Agreement. The fire chief has studied that at my request, trying to see about a middle ground between your current ask and what we had put on the table, which basically, I think I told you, was basically existing prior practice in this department. So that's what we're doing on that side. I have sent you our proposed article on the funding language, which I refer to usually as a safety valve clause. And it's pretty simple and straightforward. It's out of the Austin contract, almost verbatim. And I think that it will make sense to you what we're trying to do here, just like we did there. Austin, as you know, has a pretty long-standing history of setting targets for compensation and benefits for its fire personnel. And when you kind of push the envelope in terms of what you're able to do, you know, sooner or later, sometimes there's going to be fiscal years that you can't do what you thought you could do. So first of all, Section A about the city intends to continue the agreement in each fiscal year through its term with all payments due and so forth. And then B talks about any change in state law about voters not approving a tax rate. If the fiscal officer for the city decides that any proportionate reduction is necessary, then the city council gets to decide whether or not, it's not automatic, whether or not they make proportionate adjustments to the funding obligations in the agreement for the fiscal year. So it's a year-by-year deal. I think this is as balanced and fair a provision, safety valve provision. It doesn't really tilt toward either side, doesn't give the city the ability to, you know, welch on their deal with the firefighters, but it does give the parties an opportunity to have some flexibility in what they can actually accomplish from a funding standpoint. It's a little bit different than the one that's in the Denton contract, which allows the city council to basically, I call it a push-pause provision. It's a little bit different than this. And the rest of the contract stays in place, and it just has a temporary postponement for the agreed benefits. So this is the approach that we have taken on this piece. This is an article that's essential for us to be able to make the long-term commitment to fund the necessary positions so that we can achieve the staffing outcomes that we're both trying to do and both support. We also sent you a revised labor management committee model. I think we support the goals and objectives that are behind that. The chief supports the ability to have continued enhanced communications and interactions with the association to the extent that they're not inconsistent with his management prerogatives to make choices and decisions on operations for the department. That language is primarily out of the recent Wichita Falls contract. And I think that was Joe Tejas at the table up there. A couple of my law partners were involved in that, but I was not. So that's the history and the background on those. And the other articles that you sent to us, we're not going to have any counter proposals today. Happy to discuss any of those things. They're a little bit more complicated. I've already given you my preliminary thoughts on the grievance resolution with the combined mediation arbitrator model. We're familiar with the documents that most of those came from, so we're just going to have to do a close read and edit. I don't frankly think that we're going to be way apart on any of those things. The disciplinary piece, we're going to have to study closely and compare it to what the chief's used to, what the department's been doing. I'm hopeful that on 2 or 3 of those that we will have y'all a counter proposal well in advance of the meeting next time. So.
Okay. Funding obligations article, obviously, we're going to have to, we're not financial professionals by any means. Right. So we'll have somebody kind of look over that. And like I said, kind of figured that one was coming, you know, looking at other contracts.
Yep.
Kind of set up a little different than what I've seen in the past, which totally cool with. Just want to have somebody,
sure,
you know, take a look at it and just make sure it's all good.
Wouldn't expect anything different. That's been in, and I just want to be careful about the representations I make to you. I'm pretty sure it's been in both the fire and police contracts in Austin for the last 2 cycles, maybe 1 cycle on fire and 2 on police. The language is not identical perhaps throughout. Part of it has to do with the evolution of the state law changes, you know, on the tax rate and how it's calculated and the cap that the legislature put in there to cause problems and so forth.
Like 4 new tax rates.
Yeah, but that trigger has never been pulled in Austin. Okay, so there's never been a situation so far where that scenario happened and the city council was called upon to decide are we going to do that or not. And, you know, the other piece of that for your members is that the choice there is one that the city council makes, which means that you get the bite at the apple of telling them why they shouldn't do it if you don't think that it's justified, so. All
righty. Like I said, we'll have somebody financial wizard, evaluate that. The Labor Management Committee, I mean, just to be fair, I mean, the way it's written right now, like the proposal, like we already do that, right? Like we call them, say, let's meet up and mutually agree upon time, and we discuss all that stuff. I think, I mean, the way it's written right now doesn't like carry anything per se. Like I think when we proposed it, like right now, got a great relationship with Chief Conley. Like we meet and discuss, you know, when we need to about stuff. But for the next chief, don't know who that's going to be. You know, it mutually agreed upon times. What if the future chief just says, you know what, there is no agreeable time for me, so good luck. And then I think that the agenda part, I think, is always just a good practice to have, so we don't go in there and we're just talking about random stuff in circles. We can get in there, accomplish the task at hand, and get out.
So am I hearing you right on that the agenda is, you see that as a good idea and not an impediment?
Yeah, I think the agenda is a good idea. I mean, so the initial proposal was
Right.
Meet quarterly or at mutually agree upon times. I like I said, I like the idea of quarterly. We don't have that problem with Chief Conley right now. Can meet with him pretty much whenever. Like I said, I think the only concern going forward with a different fire chief is has to be mutually agreed upon. What if they don't agree? Then what do we do?
Okay. I hear
But
that, I hear that concern.
Yeah.
The flip side of that concern, Brian, is that the chief doesn't want to necessarily get locked into, you know, just a routine series
Yeah.
of meetings. And, you know, I realize that you didn't propose doing it monthly or bi-monthly or anything like that. You figured that quarterly was appropriate frequency. But I understand the concern that, you know, if the chief just says, well, I don't have to meet with you, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, could we have like the initial one, I guess, written in a way where, you know, at least there's some sort of standard, and then, you know, if there is nothing to discuss, whatever, we can cancel it. Like, we don't have to have a blank
Right.
scheduled meeting every time if there's nothing to discuss, right? Like, contingent upon that there is something worth having a discussion about from either party. Again, if it's only one party and we say, hey, we feel like this is a concern, you know, let's try and get in front of it, and the next chief says, oh, no, it's not, like, whatever. I'm trying to think of a way where we can prevent potentially a possible future issue, which is weird because we don't have the issue right now. Trying to, the unknown, a couple years down the road, how do we navigate the unknown? So,
The agenda piece kind of also takes care of what Brian's saying. We have some other committees already on the department. And so if neither party had an agenda item within that 5 days, there would be no need for a meeting. So therefore, you could alleviate just a nonsensical meeting. But otherwise, that meeting would take place quarterly if either party has an item to add to the agenda. That's kind of the intent behind our agenda. Like, we don't want to waste anyone's time.
Sure.
We also want to be prepared, but in the event neither side has anything to discuss, then there's no reason to meeting.
Is quarterly, how often you're meeting with the chief currently right now, Brian, would you say, or?
it varies. I mean, sometimes I'll go have conversation with him once a month. I mean, it depends. I mean, sometimes there's nothing going on. It may be several months, may not be during the quarter. It just kind of varies. I mean, at least me, I try and get down there as much as I can just to, you know, figure out what's going on, kind of give a pulse on the department kind of thing, just so we're all, you know, the open line of communication kind of thing is there, building that relationship. So, like I said, right now, it fluctuates. I mean, since we started the process with the ground rules, we haven't met.
Okay.
So, I haven't been down there in, I guess, 2 or 3 months, something like that. But there's no like standing quarterly or anything like that. It's just, hey, there's, maybe some stuff coming down the pipeline. Can we meet up and discuss it? And, like I said, I think the idea behind those meetings and stuff really helps with, we're pulling in the same direction kind of thing. Because a lot of people will ask the association, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? Hearing it from the department head's mouth, we can help kind of convey that message that we are pulling in the same direction and we're all on the same page here on everything. So there's no set timeline, I guess, of when we're meeting. So trying to figure out like an appropriate timeline. I don't know. I came up with quarterly. I mean, I'm open to 3 times a year or whatever. I mean, as long as we can come up with a way like, hey, if there is a concern, we can at least kind of have that discussion. But obviously I don't want to go to him once a week with nonsense concern here, nonsense concern there. So trying to find a good middle ground here. I don't know what that is because we're trying to predict the future. So,
Well, I'll just tell you this. I think it's a fair consideration to talk about a different fire chief in the future, especially when we're talking about a 5-year contract. And I've actually seen situations like that, where one side or the other basically has, decided they're not going to talk to each other, listen to each other, or whatever. And we don't want that to happen here. So we'll think about what the options are.
and I didn't mean also that it's only on the fire chief.
Right.
I mean, there could be next association president could
Right.
say, I don't ever want to meet with the chief. Like,
Right.
I'm open to it, but who knows? Next guys, how that's going to work. So I think, like you said, kind of goes both ways. I just want to emphasize, I didn't mean it's all
Yeah.
on them. Like, we also play a part in it. So,
Because that is what also happens sometimes, it turns into, okay, we're going to go beat the chief up, at the quarterly meeting.
yeah.
And then go brag about it at the union hall,
I think we've seen that in some other cities.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
currently happening in one city. So trying to prevent that.
Yep. All right. We appreciate that feedback. What else do we have that we
So-
need to focus on, spend time on today?
The incentive pay, like real quick, I'll just
Okay.
touch on that. So, I actually, looked through my notes and I'll email you kind of what I have. But, all of our comparison cities except one allow, administrative personnel to work overtime in the field in addition to an incentive pay they get. So just real quick, for example, Arlington, if you're a sworn personnel on 8-hour assignment, you're getting 5% of your salary. Garland's 2.7815%. McKinney is broken down by rank. But just a real quick, and like I said, I'll share this information with you, but a real quick look at how the other cities are doing it as far as administrative pay goes. I think we're under market on that. Just Grand Prairie is at $350 a month. Like I said, McKinney's thousands of dollars per year kind of thing, depending on what rank you are. I believe Den's set up the same. So I can put some together in like a readable format for y'all to see, and then I'll include all of their city's paperwork so you can see that I'm not just making it up. Like, this is the proof from the city. So,
We appreciate the data.
yeah, and that was that was really the only one on that. Okay. The work hours one, it sounds like we've got some homework to do regarding the shift duty investigator, kind of figuring that process out. So we'll have to come back to that one, and we'll try and, once we get our homework done, try and email it to you before next meeting. I think, sounds like the goal here is 2 days, try and get a bunch done. So if
We're gonna go back, I appreciate the reference to your earlier staffing document.
That you provided, we'll go back and look at that. for sure the chief and Janet and I and maybe other members of our team look at that and figure out, you know, what the options are there. It's mostly the chief's call. And we appreciate y'all's flexibility about that. But we're trying to do something that works, and we're trying to, again, focus on running the operations in the shifts in a way that are fair to firefighters. You know, my attitude about all these shift and hours things is that people are entitled to some level of predictability, you know, subject to things that happen that nobody can control, and you just have to react. But I've never seen firefighters before that didn't realize that just goes with the territory.
Yeah.
If people will be respectful and try to make sure everybody knows what they have to do and when they have to do it, you know, avoid the surprises, then usually everybody gets along fine on
Yeah.
this topic, so.
And that kind of brings up a good point, actually. So, like, a lot of the initial article that we proposed took away that surprise, and the proposal kind of brings that surprise back, right? Because the proposal is basically just spelled out, schedule determined by the chief or their designee. The initial one laid out, this is what's expected of you, these are your work hours, no surprise there. The counter is full of surprises. I mean, that's
Potential surprises.
potential surprises, yes. But that was the reason when we initially proposed it, that we again, the initial proposal was 99% copied and pasted from that
From existing. Right.
procedure. The only change to that was the shift duty investigator.
Gotcha.
So just my personal opinion on that one. But like I said, we'll do some research on figuring out how to make that schedule work for shift duty investigator. I think most of it's spelled out in that little 10-page proposal, you know, we gave y'all. But we'll review and we'll look at some other cities and see how they operate with the work periods and whatnot.
And I know the chief is reviewing that proposal, so.
Okay.
We'll have some more feedback on that as well.
Okay. I guess the only other one kind of worth addressing, I think, is the staffing proposal at this time. So where we're at in that is we're trying to work, obviously, we're trying to work within the city budget. We understand everybody fighting for a piece of the pie, every department. We're not the only employees in the city. Totally appreciate that. And I think in the past with how we've operated, I think we've shown that we're considerate of what we're asking for based on the entirety of the city budget. So we get that. I think we're probably going to have to come back with a counter on this one, and I'll email it to you once we get it hashed out. Just based on initial discussion, kind of like what I've discussed before, is the ultimate goal behind behind staffing standards, what we've expressed to the citizens during the election, what we've expressed to basically everybody we've talked to, was our priorities were securing what we have and phasing in staffing to meet the NFPA 1710 national standard. So the ultimate goal of this article is to get to that point eventually. You know, we're not sure how to get to that point. You know, we're kind of flexible with how we get there, be it hiring 1.5, hiring 1, filling with overtime, like however you think we need to get there. You know, I think what we're trying to come up with is how do we get to 4 people on equipment at the end of by the end of the contract. Now, how we get there, I think we're open to kind of having that discussion. Ultimately, you guys understand the budget and the finance and stuff. That's where we need some guidance from you guys. But I think the hardest thing we're going to have to overcome on this one, we talk about ultimately getting this contract ratified by the membership. I think 5 years is going to be a tough sell. When we surveyed the membership, they were leaning more towards 3. Some people are open to 4. I think if we can come to you know, for the sake of, I guess, interest-based bargaining, you know, this is a problem we see, problem we're trying to address, where it's a win-win for both sides, basically. How we get to a 4-year phase-in so we can have a 4-year contract. And we're open to having those, like I said, having that discussion, trying to figure it out. Like I said, we understand there's a lot of moving parts. On your guys' side, trying to make it work. I would hate to go, like I said, we do all this work, we go with the membership, and they don't agree to it, and then we're back to the drawing board here. So, like I said, I think we come back with some sort of counter on that one. We're probably gonna need a couple days to figure out how we make it work, and we are being considerate of what the chief is looking for with the 6 civil service personnel and the 2 general government. We are counting that as cost for you guys. So we're factoring that into how we're trying to figure this out.
And I think y'all recognize that operationally, you know, that's important too. It's not just the people on the apparatus, because if you don't have that complementary staff, then your incident command
Yeah.
doesn't work as optimally as it needs to.
Yeah, we're all in agreement on our side that administration is woefully understaffed. Understand that completely. But we also sold this to the membership and the citizens a vote on it, that staffing in the field to comply with NFPA 1710 was our big priority. So we're trying to figure out a way to make it work. Like I said, we're probably gonna need a couple days to come back with a reasonable counter. I'm not gonna counter with something that is absurd, and we're just gonna keep going back and forth, not trying to waste anybody's time.
And we appreciate that a bunch. We don't want to get into that because, you know, that usually turns into the city comes up with a bunch of numbers and talks about how much it costs and how much it affects the tax rate. What we're trying to do is figure out a way to do it and to do it as soon as we reasonably can. Even if we could do it in 4 years, that's different than signing a contract that says we're going to do it by X date fixed. And so that's part of the message. We want to help your members understand that. We want your members to trust this city government, to know that when we tell you we're trying to do it this way, we are, and that we're not just saying, well, you know, we've got the money, but we're not going to spend it on this.
Yeah, and I think, at least from our side table and our members, I think they've seen the willingness for the city to work with us and make progress. Like, we've seen that. We have improved staffing. We did work on the pension stuff together. Like, we have had a good working relationship. I think the membership, for the most part, agrees that we have, you guys have been consistent and true to your word, and that's what I appreciate from this side for what I've done. When we have a discussion and city management says something's going to get done, I don't have to worry about it. I mean, I know it's going to get done. So there is a lot of trust in that side of it. The other side is, I also do understand that elected and appointed officials change, and there's always that variable factor that could come into play, and that was the whole intention behind collective bargaining. Like I said from the beginning, we've had a great working relationship with city management up to this point, but I've got 20-some years left to go on the department. I don't know how much longer, you know, city management, 5, 10.
You're going to stay until you're as old as me?
Well, you know, yeah, probably. I mean, I like what I do, so maybe. I mean, that's why you keep doing it, right? Like what you do. So, you know, that's always kind of when we say, you know, we want to come in, secure we have, improve staffing, because we know we've done a good job getting to the point we are, and we know that could change any May now. I mean, next May, 10 Mays from now, like, who knows? So that's always a fear, you know, for our membership and our executive board, is there is that unknown, and we're trying to figure out a way to help mitigate that unknown. But, you know, I just wanted to express it, that we have worked well together, and I fully trust you guys when you say something's going to happen. So we've seen that historically since I've been involved.
Hey, Brian, real quick, thank you for that feedback. I think when we came to the 5 years, those were the numbers that we crunched that we could afford without having to go to the taxpayer to raise property tax. And I think part of your selling point to the public was that you were going to go out there and get the staffing, but it was also at no additional cost to the taxpayers. And that's the only way we can do it is by extending it to 5 years.
And it actually does cost the taxpayers, but it's within the parameters of normal growth in the city budget. So there's only one other thing that I can remember, and then we'll do a quick review of whether or not we have other things to talk about today. I had one question about the promotions article. We had an internal discussion as we go through that article and get you a counter on that. What is your perspective on laterals coming into the department? Laterals are coming into the department. They may actually be, rank at a driver or captain or something coming from somewhere else. They come across with their years of service. When are they going to be eligible to take the exam? They're going to have to satisfy their probationary period. But my understanding is that y'all wouldn't have a problem once they get to the 4 years worth of credit, including their outside seniority, to take the test. Is that true, or do you feel differently about it?
Yeah, so the way the seniority, the way it's written is, I think it's basically the third line on there was in a classified civil service position within the department. So they wouldn't get there if they lateral, and they're not going to get points from another department. If that's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. They would not get seniority points coming from somewhere else.
I think our understanding is lateral and pay only, be per pay scale.
Okay. All right.
That's how we read that. The hiring article was they would only come over and pay as an incentive,
Right.
not counting years of service or anything like that.
So I'm not sure where we'll come down on that, but I just want y'all to think about that paradigm. Somebody comes over here, we think they're a good hire, they're satisfactory on probation. They still have to take and pass the test, and that just may be a deal killer for other people that are on that promotional ladder that are in this department that started here. But just think through that process.
Yeah, and I think kind of that point that you hit on was, I think the mentality of us and how we operate is you've put your time in here, like you're going to get those seniority points. You come from somewhere else, like that. Quite frankly, I mean, we appreciate the experience to have somewhere else, but
Right.
that doesn't matter here. So,
And I'm just asking, is there a difference between seniority points for promotion? I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about eligibility to take the test.
no, so the way it'd be written is that section 1, they would have had to serve in the department. I guess for definitions, department would be Irving Fire Department.
Right.
In the department for 4 years before they'd be eligible to test.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Anything else that y'all can think of that we need to discuss or ask about in order to get our work done for the next 2 days? 28 and 29, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you need from us?
Can I ask a question about staffing?
You bet. You don't need my permission.
I was just going back to it a little bit. In our original proposal, one of the stipulations that we had in there was minimum staffing levels, and that's for field work. And the one that you guys presented has additional civil service positions. And that was kind of harping on a little bit what Brian said. We're looking to fill those positions in the field. And the way it's written here, and that's what we were trying to look at, we want the chief to have permission, the ability to run the department the way he sees fit and staff equipment the way he sees fit. And I think that's one of the big sticking points we're going to be for our members is we want boots on the ground to deliver more efficient service. And that's probably something that comes back.
So I do think it's important for us to have some further discussion on that. There's 2 ways to put people on engines and ladders and fire trucks and brush trucks and quints and all other stuff. One of them is adding people to the department, and the other one is putting people on overtime pay. Because basically everybody's pretty close to the line, either built-in overtime or right on the edge of it, and so if you work an extra shift, it's an overtime shift. The cost to the city is almost the same. It is it is usually within an order of magnitude of less than 0.20 of a dollar, okay? Because on the front end, you probably already know all this, on the front end, you're putting somebody on an overtime, you're actually saving the benefits and the training costs and everything else for a new firefighter. But if you do that 5 times, then it would have been cheaper to bring in a new firefighter, okay? So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The other dynamic here is, in this department, as in many others, there have been association complaints and individual complaints, or maybe not complaints, but observations and feedback that we're having to work too much overtime. You know, we need more time with our families, we need quality of life, we have adverse health effects, you know, and so forth and so on as a result of too much time and work. Some firefighters cause that themselves by, you know, being on what they used to call the rat list in San Antonio. You know, you sign up for it, you know, and you get beat up, and then, you know, you're telling somebody, why did I get beat up? Well, because you volunteered to get beat up. So we're trying to balance that. And so doing it all with overtime is a bad idea for those reasons. Doing it all with FTEs would cost more money and it's going to be a collection of both. And so it's somewhere targeted in the middle of this much overtime, this many new positions. This budget that we're talking about takes all that into account. It is part overtime supporting and transitioning into year 2, 14 additional FTEs for those positions on apparatus. So I really don't think we're on a different page about how that gets done. If the chief has extra people that he can staff, we'll talk about that internally, because I think that part of what you're talking about is we can achieve 4 people on some of the apparatus in the department at an earlier point in time because we have the people to do it. So I'll make sure we're thinking about that.
Yeah, and I think that I understand the full FTE versus the overtime. There's been that debate for years. Where's the breakover point? And I've looked for the research. I can't find the actual number.
Nobody finds the answer.
No, but what I'm concerned with is the minimum staff, like daily staffing number. This is how many people we're going to staff every day in order to keep, as we are currently, we have some equipment that has 4 firefighters on it every day, and that's part of minimum staffing. If we add the positions and just say we're adding additional positions, what's to keep those positions from getting moved to, you know, staffing 14 people in training or over here? I think currently, Chief Conley has advocated for 4 firefighter staffing since I've known the man, since 20-plus years, and we have as well. But we want something, and that's something that we've, looking back over history, is we've kind of implemented, hey, we're going to get to this, but then something happens and it, you know, pulls back, or we change something. We have 4 firefighters here today, but tomorrow we might not. And I think that's what, you know, and it's kind of part of the contract that we're trying to get to, is this is a daily minimum service level for the city of Irving.
All right, I think we understand.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I think that, we got anything else on the staffing one, or, I said, we're probably gonna have to, like I said, go to the drawing board and kind of come up with a counter that kind of makes sense. And then, like I said, I'll get you the work hours one, kind of what I come up with, and, I think there was one section of the work hours, I guess, not trying to jump around, that I just thought of, was in the initial one, I think I had it written as, I gotta pull up the initial one, but we're currently on a 24/48 schedule. That's what we wrote in there. There was a section in that article that was basically an out from that. Say the next chief comes in and they want 48.96. Are they going to be able to do that? Because our contract says 24/48. So I had that little opener in there, like, just in case. There's a mutually agreed upon work schedule. Okay.
Yeah, that's, I was just gonna read to you, but yeah, you're right, it was the mutual agreement.
Yeah, and that was, it was still both,
Yes, it was taken out of ours, because again, we took out kind of all the scheduling on the shifts and just made
Yeah.
it whatever the work week was.
yeah,
so
and
It
both,
wasn't really necessary based on our edits.
yeah, and that was,
I
yeah.
take that point, we'll discuss that internally. I understand what you're saying, and we'll think about, because what you're really telling me is that if the chief wanted to do that, this contract actually ties his hands instead of giving him the flexibility.
Right, so that would give, with mutual consent of both parties, that schedule could be modified. So it can't just be unilateral versus right now, you're tied into it, versus there is the opportunity to open it upon mutual consent.
Is it your perspective or belief that that alternative schedule could be at the same cost as opposed to a higher cost than the existing 2448? Because I would have assumed that the 2448 was the least costly for
So-
covering the man hours.
So from the studies we've seen, there is no cost change. It's still a 53-hour work week.
Gotcha.
Um,
So it doesn't automatically create built-in overtime.
no.
All right.
Yeah, so we've done some studies on that. We're just, again, that's chief's
Okay.
responsibility to set schedule. So we
Understood.
just want the ability, if, we decide to make the change mid-contract or whatever, if both parties agree to it, we can. Try to free up a little bit of, I guess, wiggle room or make adjustments if needed.
Anything else, Janet?
No,
All right, we
not
appreciate
on
it.
that, no. I just want to clarify, that the only thing I show that we haven't received from you all in terms of articles based on the table of contents is the vacation leave.
Yeah, so I mean, I can send you
Article.
the vacation. I'll do that right now.
Okay,
To everyone's surprise in here, it is mostly copied and pasted.
okay.
So, but again, that one is kind of going to be contingent on how we figure out these work hours, the productive time versus unproductive time. Like there's a lot of factors that go into it. But I can give it to you guys for y'all to look at.
Good.
And then,
Send that over. And if you will, give us just a second. I want to walk outside just a second and ask the team.
okay. Now, when he gets back, I'll explain the vacation one, but yeah.
Is that the last of it?
This one, so it is copy and pasted from city policy. There's one more section in the city policy on that little chart that says maximum accumulation. I believe 4 years ago or something like that, there was an email sent out saying they were removing the cap. So that's why I didn't put it in there. I did put under that box, there's no max accrual. However, you're only going to get paid out to 2 years when you retire. And then the only other change I made in there was section 4. Currently, we have, under General Procedure 19.1, we have 7 vacation slots available per day. So we have, and I'll email it to you, we have a study conducted on how much each member accrues and how many vacation days actually need to be available for members to use their accrued vacation throughout the year. That number is just over 8.5 per day to be open for people to actually use their vacation accrual. And like I said, I will send you that study we have. It's broken down by each rank, number of people we have, their years of seniority, because they all accrue at different rates. And it's a pretty nifty little spreadsheet. And then,
And this is a study that y'all did?
yeah, a member has conducted the study using our membership information, years of service with accrual rates. And then,
That study has been shared with Chief Conley prior. He is aware of it.
Mighty good, thank you.
and then the only other part that I put in there that's not copy and paste was battalion chief and above. There's a separate vacation roster that is in the brand new department policy that came out. So I guess this this article is a combination of city policy and department policy. But that's the gist of that one. And like I said, the way it's currently set up right now with 8.5 vacation spots that we would need is based on the number of employees we currently have. Obviously, if we add employees, that's something that we may have to look at some point down the road, because we're running into a point where we're accruing more than there are days available in a calendar year. So how do we navigate that? You know, I think part of lifting the cap helps to some extent, but again, kind of don't know. Hard to predict what the future's gonna look like with staffing and whatnot. So
We certainly need to take into account the vacation utilization, the ability for people to take that time off. We already talked about that with overtime and level of work and all that other kind of stuff. The wellness dynamic that's here. But look forward to seeing that study and taking a look at it and seeing how that fits into the projections that are behind our staffing proposal for the 14 and 14 and 13 and 13, to make sure that, you know, all the pieces of the puzzle are there. And I'll just mention to you, we will be sending to you in the near future, maybe not today, but soon, today, our sick leave proposal, which continues, I think, all the current standards for the accrual and the enhanced payout above the amount under Chapter 143, with the cap of 61,000 and something dollars will be in that proposal. And so I think that pretty much gets things on the table, and we'll continue to work. As I indicated earlier, we will try to be giving you counter proposals to the items that we got today. In the meantime, what we might want to do is we might want to just think about week from now out, just kind of having a short little logistics call. You know, we could post a Zoom meeting if we wanted to and have a 10 or 20 minute, you know, I'm just talking about a prep meeting for our actual negotiations on the 28th and the 29th, because I want to be here and get ready and have everything ready to roll.
Yeah.
We may not get finished, but I'm planning on getting it finished.
Yeah.
Full 2 days.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll do, I guess, over the next couple of days on the promotions one, I'll think of a way to, if we do decide to go down this route, what language looks like for that first list, extending it. I think if we don't put that in the contract, then it defaults to 143, and then we'll be 6 months without a list. So I'll get some to you guys
That's
on
good.
that.
That's good.
Thank y'all.
And you're just gonna send us your analysis too on the the administrative pay?
Yep.
on the
Yeah. So
additional pay?
I have what you need is the cert pay.
Yep.
The vacation accrual and use spreadsheet, and then the extending the eligibility list on the next test. We'll get you guys something on staffing. That one's probably be a couple days. And then the work hours one with the shifting investigator and whatnot. And we got some homework. I will get you the cert pay, vacation, and those two for sure, either today or first thing in the morning. And then I will get you the other ones as they come in. I think we're all on the same page. We want those next 2 days to be very productive. So try and front load all the info I can to you guys. Yeah, in the meantime, if y'all ever have any questions or something, like we can hop on a Zoom, reach out. I think that's about it, unless y'all have anything else, or I think, yeah, the only other thing we're waiting on, I guess, is the overtime article with the hours worked. We're still trying to figure out how the Kelly Day thing and work periods is gonna work with clawing back hours and all that stuff. That's kind of a big one for us, how we navigate that one.
So, y'all think about that. Let us know when you think that's ready. If we have this little interim Zoom call, might not be a bad idea for us to have an explanation so that we can do our homework on the inside.
The overtime one, the hours worked FLSA.
Right.
So I think Daniel touched on that a little bit last time. Like, I think you guys are gonna look into it and figure out like how to make it work and,
Yeah, and I'm just saying, finding out what y'all's perspective is on
Okay.
those things.
Okay.
So that, we can do our homework based on, here's what y'all think the answer is, and we can, go look at that and see if we agree or disagree. So,
I think the answer to that is, and I'm not trying to be smart aleck or anything, but the way that it was presented was the way to do it, because when you start factoring in sick leave usage during a 27-day cycle, you're going to either have to start clawing back overtime already accrued or already utilized in the Kelly Day process, or it's going to have to go from one cycle to the other, and under FLSA, you can't split cycles. Or we'd have to change our pay cycle to a different day number, possibly.
Pay period.
Correct.
Right, yeah, you're exactly right.
So we would, it's logistically pretty hard to do without counting sick leave as time worked. And with, some of the current woes we've had with the payroll software stuff going on already, it seems like it would be very, very tricky to implement.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you bringing that up as a reminder.
Yeah.
Exactly, yes. I copy and pasted that one for that reason, because we didn't know how to make that work, so. But appreciate you guys.
Take care.
So,
Likewise.
Thank you all.
thank you.